In this last part of Unit 4, what we are going to go over is looping and if statements together. So several times during this last unit, we've had if statements inside loops, and you can have if statements in loops, loops and if statements inside if statements, loops inside loops, and so on and so on. So we're just going to go over an example of having an if statement embedded inside a loop. And the problem we're going to look at is this famous fizz-buzz question. So what the question is, you need to go through from the numbers 1 through 100, and you need to print out the number, except when the number is divisible by 3, then you print out fizz. And if the number is divisible by 5, you print out buzz. And if it's divisible by 3 and 5, then you have to print out fizz-buzz. So this is a famous like computer science question that sometimes people get on job interviews. So our top-down design, we're just going to have our question. There is no input. It's just going to start spitting this out. And we're just going to decide if it's divisible by 3 or 5 or both. And we're either going to print out fizz-buzz, or just the number. So we're definitely going to need a loop because we're going around 100 numbers, and then we need an if statement because we need to make a decision of which one of these to do, and we're probably going to have an if, else if statement. So we begin at start. I'm just going to use a for loop counting from 1 to 101, or 100, less than or equal to 100, and count up by 1 each time. And then I'm just going to have my if-else statement here. And it's going to be a compound Boolean expression, my first one, my if statement. And we're going to use the modulus modifier. So I'm going to take my counter that is generated from my loop, and I'm going to modulus by 3, which gives me the remainder when I divide by 3. And if it's equal to 0, then that is divisible by 3. And I'm going to do the same thing by 5 to see if the counter happens to be divisible by 3 and 5, so for example 15. And if it is, then we print out fizz-buzz. If not, we do an else if. Just check to see if it happens to be divisible just by 3. If it is, print out fizz. If it's not, then we'll check for 5. And if it's none of them, we just show the counter. So this is what it would look like in Python. So I have my counter in Python. I'm going to go in a range 1 to 101. Remember, it's non-inclusive. So this will go from 1 to 100, by default counting up by 1. We have our first compound Boolean expression. Then we're just checking for 3, then for 5. And if all of those fail, then just print out the counter. I just have a sleep in here so that it doesn't go too fast when I'm printing it out as an example. You don't need to do that. In fact, you probably wouldn't want to. And I've imported time for that as well. So I'm just going to put a breakpoint right here, and then we're going to run it in debug mode so we can see what exactly is happening. And watch our variables over here. So counter should start being 1. So clearly we would be interested in these. So I'm going to add them to the watch so we can see what's happening to all of our Boolean expressions. And I will add the entire one here, our compound Boolean expression. So those are now functioning over on the side. There we go. Clearly, yes, 1 is not divisible by any of those things. So we can step over that. 1 is not divisible by 3. 1 is not divisible by 5. So just print out 1. And it does. Okay. Then it comes back up. Counter is now going to be equal to 2. So notice it's changed to 2. Once again, it's not going to be divisible by any of these, so print out 2 and then come back. Now counter is 3. So 3 is divisible by 3, but it's not divisible by 5, so our compound one is still false. So this one is going to be false. This is actually going to be is true, so it's actually going to print out fizz for our very first time. And then notice once again, if else if statement, it just hops out and goes straight to the bottom. And then we come back, and now counter is going to be 4. Once again, no luck on 4. 5, one more step to get to 5. So now our counter is 5, so our second one is true, but still our compound one is not. So it will print out buzz this time. There we go. And now I'm just going to loop around several times quickly here until we get to close to 15, because that's the next interesting one. So we're at 12, 13. Okay. This is 14. And this is the one where it should be when we go to 15. Notice these are now both true, and our compound one is clearly also true, so it's actually going to come in and print fizzbuzz. So that's how we can put loops inside of if statements and so on. Any combination of loops and if statements together, we can actually print out. And I'm just going to let this run through for all of the other options, and you can just see it run here.